What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about SoFi, I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. Starting off with data points, don't really have too much for this week. Monday, it is going to be relatively quiet for data, although the market's going to be digesting Trump's new big, beautiful bill that got all the necessary rubber stamps and approvals over this weekend. And so, again, some people are very bullish on it. Some people are very bearish. Nonetheless, you do have a somewhat even divide as far as that goes. But with SoFi and pretty much majority of the market being considered relatively overbought, that does mean you're going to have a lot of volatility. Similar to what has happened pretty much Thursday, Friday, a lot up-down type of scenarios. So for those of you that are day traders, that might be somewhat advantageous. I'll go over the technicals near the end of the video. Aside from that, though, moving over to Tuesday, we have the consumer credit change. It is relatively old data, so it's going to be as of May, but this is going to be the market's insight to how consumers are truly doing, whether they are out there getting more credit or if they are paying off bills or possibly even reading between the lines, excluding and just defaulting. So that's going to really signal to the market how tariffs are impacting consumers. And of course, based on SoFi's business, that will be a pretty big one to watch for. Current forecast is 12.1 billion for that. Aside from that, Wednesday, we have the FOMC minutes. Normally, that was a big deal like in 2024, but lately, the last couple instances of this, the market hasn't really cared because, of course, I think generally the market knows what the minutes are going to state already. So in reality, I don't really see that being that impactful to the market. Thursday, you have initial jobless claims, a lot of Fed speakers, and then Friday, not all that much going on. The only other thing that could potentially impact the market will be tariffs. So far over the weekend, I kind of saw some tentative data associated to Europe. Europe is going to be a big catalyst, but nothing kind of set in stone. So that one will be a big one. Early this morning, we did see Becent mention this. So 100 smaller countries will get a set tariff rate. Many obviously never even contacted the States, which kind of does make sense. A lot of the smaller countries, they have no real desire to kind of negotiate. So that's something to keep in mind. But nonetheless, a hot topic this week will be tariffs. And we already do generally know how the market reacts to Trump and tariffs. Most of the time, it's seen as a negative. And again, as I mentioned, with SoFi and the broader market being relatively overbought, you'll see a lot of volatility as a byproduct of that. Generally speaking, though, I'm still overall optimistic with this week. A lot of entities are starting to mention that the S&P should be on its way to 7,000. So as of right now, at the time of doing this video, it is sitting at 62.79. So a lot of individuals calling for 7,000 would be a pretty crazy run for 2025. So yeah, let me know your viewpoint. Do you think 7,000 is next? Of course, on a technical standpoint, 63.50 is a big one to watch for. So that's a very heavy resistance. So ultimately, that could be hit in the early part of the week. And normally, how the market has reacted to these big kind of resistance levels, it allows it to break above, and then you have a lot of analysts start to freak out, and then it causes a pullback. Again, I think the market just struggles psychologically with these levels. So 63.50, just kind of watch for that. Specific to SoFi, though, nothing really coming out this week. No SEC filings. Most likely, you should see a continued FOMO leading into their upcoming earnings. As I did a video, I think it was on Friday, I put out, historically goes up roughly like 11% ever since they announced the date of their earnings up until their actual earnings. So you should see a nice push higher. Again, with SoFi, usually leading into the earnings, it does result in some new analyst ratings. Doesn't logically make sense, but that's just SoFi and how you see some manipulation. Last couple of ratings did come out, were relatively bearish, so I think they were trying to slow the momentum of SoFi, in my opinion. Maybe they have good intention. I don't really know. I'm not here to judge that. But nonetheless, most likely not this week, but probably next week, you should be seeing at least another 2 analyst ratings. So again, something to keep in mind. Aside from that, though, going into this week, for shorts. So I'll give you a quick summary of this. So 13.89% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 150.76 million shares overall are being shorted. Short score is 55.61, DTC is 2.25 days. So very high stuff. Shorts have really started to double down. You can see that from this kind of blue line right here. So it did have a low on, looks like June the 23rd, and then they've been really doubling down since then for whatever reason. Again, maybe just trying to slow the momentum of SoFi, because even going over here for a second, SoFi has gone up roughly even over the last 1 month, 36.85%. So SoFi is honestly kicking ass, taking names. It's definitely moving higher, and everyone seems to be in euphoria type of scenario. So let me know your viewpoint on that. But when it comes down to options, that one is going to be a big thing for Monday, because SoFi did close with a lot of in the money options, as you can kind of see right here. So at with it closing exactly at this 1857, so that does mean that 1850 strike prices and below are all considered in the money. So popping back over here, you have 16,000 at the 1850, 11,000 at the 18, 4,000 at 1750, and so forth and so forth. Looking forward into this week though, you do have 81,000 at that 1650. So if for whatever reason SoFi is able to close and continue its level and stay above 1650, this is where you could see a very nice potential gamma squeeze. And then the following week you have massive numbers right here. That's a monthly option chain. But looking forward into this week, the only thing to really watch for is you have 10,000 at that 18. So potentially if come Friday SoFi is roughly around the 18 to 1850 mark, you might see shorts wake up a little bit. But going back over here, looking at the bulls, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $20 to $22 range for this week. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub 17. So clearly this week is a volatile week. You have kind of polar opposites. So anticipate, again, a lot of volatility. Aside from that though, as I mentioned, I believe on my Friday video, or it might have been the Thursday, you didn't really see any transactions occurring after hours on the dark pool. So of the options I did mention that were in the money from last week, they weren't really covered by market makers. So again, meaning that you could see a very nice push higher come Monday as a byproduct of that. With it at 1857, it is trading right now between this R3 and this R2. So 1932 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. 1822 is going to be a strong support. And then dependent on the volatility, 1754. Above 1932, which mind you would be a new 52-week high for SoFi, you have 2220. So yeah, big things definitely are on the horizon for SoFi. And of course, based on the bulls and the bears, they are anticipating a lot of volatility. So potentially this R1 being touched right here, or even above that fib level, moving over to the classic, the R3 and the classic. Aside from all that, no real articles kind of like coming out over the weekend. So it is just going to be largely based on tariffs, kind of people's interpretation of the big beautiful bill, which I know there's a lot of positives and negatives associated to that. But for those of you that are familiar, what do you think that is going to do to the market? Two questions: in the short term and also in the long term, because I feel like people are saying in the short term it's not so crazy, versus in the long term, that's where, of course, if the states doesn't get their debt levels under control, that's where it'll be a lot more impactful. But aside from that, on the actual chart, not really much negatives to really bring up. It is relatively overbought, but as I've mentioned a couple times already in this video, so is the broader market. So just anticipate a lot of volatility, which is going to be ideal for option traders and also day traders, swing traders, and whatever else. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi in the comments below. I do feel for this week, we are most definitely going to be hitting a 52-week high. Question is, how high? So I feel like roughly it'll be kind of sub 1950. Most likely you'll kind of have it touch that a couple times, but nonetheless, I feel like between 19 to 1950 is where we will land for this week. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Do you think that we're going to be seeing higher highs, or do you think that this is the week that we break down? So what's your general thoughts? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Hopefully everyone had a good long weekend. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you are looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.